Hey everyone, Jeremy here from Up North Athletics, and today I'm going to be doing a little bit of a different style of podcasting with a Q&A. The reason I wanted to do this was I find it easier to answer questions over video chat than rather typing everything out. So this is what I'm going to do for this video here. I'm just going to get right into it, but I do have to give a disclaimer that I am at an airport, so there is some background noise. We will try to edit this out to make it more easier to understand. So if you hear any background stuff, that's why. But I'm just gonna get right into it. First question is, what are my favorite 3 exercises to do in the gym? These have changed over the years. The foundational exercise that I really used to do a lot of was chest press, deadlifts, and squats. For my squats, personally, what I like to do now is I like to do a unilateral exercise, so a single leg exercise, something like a lunge or a side lunge or a split squat stance. I just find it helps me better. I don't have as much hip pain, so that's the first one. The second one, instead of deadlifts, I actually like to do like a kettle swing or a bridge. I still like to do a single leg deadlift, but a lot of my leg exercise nowadays are body weight. I'm not really trying to push my legs to the max. I've already done the 405 squat. I've done about 450 on deadlift. Like, those are some of my lifts, and I don't really need to get back to that point at this current state. Doesn't mean that I won't ever, but right now, currently, that's not what I want to do. So those would be my first 2. My third one, I actually like to do like a alternating chest press with dumbbells. I personally enjoy that a little bit better. I find that I get better chest activation than chest press with a barbell. Not that I'm saying any of these exercises, like if you're doing barbell squats, if you're doing deadlifts, if you're doing chest press, that's awesome. But maybe just try incorporating these 3 different ones, because sometimes it's actually really good to change it up just to feel a different feel of the exercise, but also get a different contraction, get a different angle. It really helps to build and strengthen the muscles. So that's question 1. Question 2, you have a strong online presence. How do you deal with haters and negativity when and if it comes up? The one thing with being in a space, in any space, you're gonna have people that are not gonna agree with you. And I think just knowing that coming into it will really help you and make sure that you don't take everything literally. Also, too, I also look at it as like, if they're gonna come like out of their day to like write something negative, like, you know, they're probably going through something. Like if they don't even know you, it's some stranger around the world. Like if they're gonna put so much negativity in a comment or quote unquote hater, I think that's something that like really shows that either you're doing something and you're trying to put yourself out there, or a lot of times, like I said, it just has something to do with the other person. It has actually usually never anything to do with you. So that's just my advice when it comes to like building your platform, or if you receive any quote unquote hate, it's just to realize that just keep going, keep doing your thing. You're gonna have people that are gonna support you. Just don't let those things deter you from moving forward. I think a lot of people quit because they get those comments and those things, and that is a really big thing that I find that if you can just push past that, you'll find that it really helps you just stay in your own path, stay in your own lane, and you'll start creating better and better content and building a better brand. Question 3. So this kind of ties into this one here, but what advice do you have for someone starting a business? I think the big thing when you're starting any business is just doing something you enjoy, right? Like, it doesn't have to be something crazy. It doesn't have to be like the next best thing. But I really think that if you're gonna do or follow business, you also have to understand that you're gonna have to make sacrifices, but you also have to enjoy what you do. I think a lot of people think that starting a business is, I don't want to say easy, but I think there's a lot of misconception that, you know, you make a lot of more money, and that's in cases, yes, that's true, but there's a lot of sacrifices that you have to make, and it depends on at what point you want to scale your business. You know, if you're someone who wants to make $5,000 a month in your business for someone who wants to make $20,000 a month, well, there's going to be different things that you have to do to get to that point. But the one thing that I always say is just do what you are accustomed to doing and be yourself in your business. Like, don't try to be someone else because you're trying to impress other people, or you're trying to, you know, be what the norm is. I think there's something I actually learned from this weekend. I was in Coaching Con. I was at Coaching Con 2024, and the one big thing that really stood out to me is like sometimes taking the lonely path. And what I mean by that is, taking the path that not all of us think are going to be the path that is going to be the easiest, but also the path that doesn't always follow everyone else, right? Taking the path that is going to be out of the norm, the things that maybe you had people in your life, your loved ones and things like that are telling you, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. Like, if it's something that you really truly want to do and that's something that you have a passion for, like, doesn't mean you have to quit your day job right away. Just if you can slowly work on it. Like, when I started my business, I had 4 different jobs. It took me about 2 or 3 years to transition out of those other 3 jobs to now do what I do now, and that's what I do now full time. So there's a lot of things that come with it, but also takes time, and it takes some patience as well when building a business. But those would be my tips if you're someone starting a business. Number 4, what's your favorite form of cardio? So for me at this point in my life, if I'm gonna do any sort of cardio, I love to walk. So I get my steps. Like, that's something that I have like a step goal for me. My daily goal is anywhere from 8,000 to 12,000 usually. Like, it's not really a goal at this point. It's just what I do usually now. And that's something that I personally enjoy if I look at it as like cardio. But if I'm like gonna do something that gets my heart rate up, I try to do something that's like as quick as possible. So sometimes like just hit intervals, like maybe just for like 10 minutes and that's it. Sometimes it's only 5 minutes, sometimes it's 7 minutes, but like you do, let's say 20 seconds on and then take a 20-second break, 20 seconds on. So when I mean 20 seconds on, it means like you go as hard as you can. It could be like ball slams, it could be sprinting, it could be doing the stairs, it could be whatever for 20 seconds. And then the other 20 seconds, you just take a break. And then you repeat that. So 20 seconds on, 20 seconds off, 20 seconds on, 20 seconds off for, let's say, 5 to 10 minutes. And that's sometimes what I'll do as well. I find it's more time efficient, but I also don't love doing cardio. So it also is something that I get it done and over with, and then I go on with my day. I usually do it at the end of my workout as well. Like if I'm doing weights, I'll usually do it at the end. But I would say if you're someone who has never done any sort of cardio, or you're trying to start like doing some form of cardio, I would start with walking and then building up from there. That would be my advice. Question number 5, what's your favorite song of all time? That is such a hard question to answer. I am also someone who doesn't really have a favorite genre. I guess you could say that I go towards more like hip hop, rap, and like EDM kind of music. I personally don't have a favorite song that I can think of on the top of my head, but there was a song for a long time. It's called Unforgettable by French Montana. That was one of my favorite songs for a long time. But I'm not a big proponent on certain genres. If I like the music or I like the song, I like it. Doesn't matter what the genre. But I also do love like remixes. So if you're someone who really likes workout music or needs some workout music, go to SoundCloud. I really like SoundCloud mixes because they do kind of like multiple songs in one, and usually it's like an hour mix. And I find that really helps me like work out and stuff. And it's also pretty good. Like they do good mix-ups and stuff. So I would say that would be like favorite music. I didn't really answer favorite song. It's kind of a hard one for me. So we'll just move on. Question 6 is, what would you say to someone who says you shouldn't eat fruit because the sugar makes you fat? What would you say to someone who says you shouldn't eat fruit because the sugar makes you fat? The one thing that with this statement that's so hard to communicate is that there's so much misinformation in the fitness space. Like either there's a study that comes out, or there's one guru that's like, this is the way, this is like, you can't do this, or things like that. I always just say, like, if somebody ever comes up to me, I always ask them like, okay, why? Like, why does it make you fat? Like, can you explain to me? Usually if you ask them a question back, then most people they have no clue why. Like, they just heard it. They just heard that fruit, like, let's say that in this scenario here that the sugar from the fruit makes you fat. And then you ask them why, they get kind of stumped because they're like, I actually don't know why. I just heard it. So, but if they come back in an answer, and usually the answer is like, well, because of the sugar, there's too much sugar, there's things like that. You know, if you're someone who's diabetic, this is a little bit of a different conversation. We got to make sure that your sugars are, you know, especially if you're taking insulin, this is a little bit of a different story. But for most people, and I'm saying most people because when I categorize most people, I've worked now with hundreds of people, but most of the times people are okay to eat fruit and they don't get fat. It's not the fruit that's making the person fat, and that has fat, or that has gone to a point where they're like, quote unquote, what they would see as their I guess worst shape. It's not the fruit that's getting you. It's like all the other things that are added into it. Actually, one thing that I do with people is I tell them, like, if you're gonna track calories or you're gonna like start doing habits and stuff, like, start by not tracking fruit and vegetables right away. Like, just eat them because they're good for you, not because they are low calorie or things like that. Like, eat fruit and vegetables because they're healthy for you. They have fruit. Obviously they have fruit. They have fiber. They have vitamins. They have water. You know, those are really good things for your nutrients when you're looking at fruits and vegetables. And I would just say that the biggest thing is just, if somebody's kind of putting you down like that, or a lot of times, like, if you have a coach, right? Like, I would say, from a coach, listen to your coach, like, ask them questions too, but also, you know, if your coach is telling you an honest answer and it's logical and it makes sense, right? Like, try to trust them. But if you do your own research and you find something, like, always bring it to your coach, always, you know, ask questions. But I would just say, like, if you're in that state where someone in your life is telling you these things, but deep down it doesn't feel right, like, it's like you think deep down, like, is it really fruit that's the issue here? Like, is it? And most of the times, like, people will say, no, it's not the issue. Like, fruit's not the issue. You know, so if we're creating, you know, everyone's heard of calorie deficit, just eating less calories than what your body burns at your maintenance calories. You know, if you're eating 2,000, let's say your maintenance calories is 1,700 calories, and you're eating 2,000 calories of fruit, well, yeah, you'll probably gain fat over time, but that's not gonna likely happen. And most of the times, if you can eat around 2 to 4 servings of fruit a day, that's a pretty good start. I say 1 cup. So, like, 1 cup of berries is usually 1 serving, and then 1 fruit is another serving. So, like, 1 apple, 1 pear, things like that. So that's kind of the basis off of this. Next question here. We're gonna move on. Next question. What was the first step you took when you started your health journey? So I started my health journey because I was getting ready for college baseball. I was a kid who was always athletic. I played high-level sports. I just ate a ton of food and didn't have any really self-control. It was easy for me to just consume. Luckily, I was also an athlete, so I was, like, always running. I was always active. I was always weightlifting. I was always, like, practicing my sport. So luckily, I had that as well on top of it. If I was just eating and doing nothing, I would have been in probably a worse starting point. But honestly, like, and this is not what I would recommend for people to do, but I just started, like, running. And I know a lot of people do that right away. I wish I wouldn't have started that. Like, I started to eat better, started eating healthier foods, and just started running. I did lose weight, but I also know that I wasn't keeping my muscle. I didn't start weightlifting for a couple years after, when I got into college and started, like, learning about weightlifting. And when my baseball career was done, I decided to really step into the coaching space, and also, you know, wanting to help other people, because I saw the difference it made for me, and I really wanted to, you know, I wanted to share that. I wanted to, like, I know how defeating it can feel sometimes, and I think the one big thing for me is, like, if I can help someone get to a point where they also felt like I did when I started. I felt very lost when I started. So if I can be someone to help help that person not feel lost, like that's an amazing feeling. I wish I had someone there that could have helped me like that. So that's also why I got started and where I started. If I were gonna have someone start, we would probably start them on, tracking habits. So like starting with protein, fruits, veggies, adequate water, starting to slowly incorporate weightlifting, steps, things like that. We'd start there first rather than like do cardio all day, run for hours on end, eat like 500 calories only. Like that's like a recipe for disaster. And that's actually what happened is I lost a ton of weight, then I gained some back, and I just yo-yoed for a few years until I really found like, okay, I can't keep doing this. It's not really good on my body, and I need to slow down and figure out like the best approach for me. So I would say at this point in my life, I'm pretty balanced. I still get in my head about if I should be, losing more body fat or I'm gaining more muscle. I've been at those. I've had more muscle and I've had less body fat. So I'm kind of in that middle range right now where I have, a healthy amount of body fat, but also a healthy amount of muscle. And I think that's where that misconception can get with a lot of people is like, they get in as I'm going to try to gain as much muscle as possible. And like, that's awesome. Like start off like gaining muscle, but at the end of the day too, you kind of get to a point where there's like so much, there's a threshold. And when you have to pass that threshold, sometimes you have to make some sacrifices, and sometimes they can be unhealthy. So that's my answer to that question. Question 8. What are your tips for staying on track while traveling? This is actually really cool because I'm traveling currently. So my one thing is I also have to be very aware. So if there's anyone out there who has any dietary restrictions, I do not eat gluten and I do not eat dairy. I would love to be able to have some of those things. My gut just isn't in the best shape for it. I also have been diagnosed with celiac disease. So with gluten, I have to be very careful. Dairy, it's not worth me eating the dairy and then feeling like absolute shit after. So I don't eat dairy. I can have goat cheese. Goat cheese is okay, but cow's milk or cow's dairy doesn't really sit well with me. So when I'm traveling though, I gotta be really careful on what like foods, what things that they have. I really try to stick with like high protein options. And also when you can find a fruit and vegetable, I usually bring greens with me because I know I'm not gonna get adequate vegetables and fruit. The location where I was before, I didn't have a kitchen or anything, so I couldn't really buy groceries. I only had a little mini fridge. I was lucky and fortunate enough that at the event there was like lunches and things. They had vegetables, they had like proteins and things like that. So I was very fortunate for that. But if you're traveling and you're going to a destination, I always try to focus on like what are things you can bring with you that are convenient. So one thing for me is like to go tuna packs. They're actually like really high in protein. They're about 20 grams of protein. If you're not someone who likes tuna, then that's going to be not an option for you. Another one is like high protein pepperoni or like beef jerky. I use those too sometimes. I don't like to use them when I'm not I don't like to use them when I am at home because I can eat like steak and chicken and fish and like higher qualities of meats. I wouldn't say that's probably the highest quality of meat, but it's better than, in my opinion, than trying to go to like McDonald's or something. And that's what I find is like things like that. Another one would be like if you can handle protein shakes, like whey shakes, that's awesome too. I brought collagen powder with me instead of whey because whey, like I said, milk doesn't sit well with me. So collagen, so there's some protein in there. Greens, I had said. Amino acids, I really like amino acids on trips. There's a misconception. There's two sides to the aminos. Like people are like, don't take them or do take them. I'm actually in the middle. I really believe that if you're someone who doesn't get a ton of protein in, aminos can really help you. I like to take them because it's almost, for me, a point of if I'm not going to get enough protein that day, at least I know I had my aminos for that day. It's a little bit better than not having them at all. And especially when traveling, it's really convenient to have them, and it's really and it tastes delicious, and it's easier to drink water. Another thing would be like bring things that you like make. So if you can make protein balls, like bring them with you, bring them on the plane. Like you can bring food, like if you want to make a sandwich, like bring a sandwich. Like there's things that you can do, but for like the plane ride. But when you're out and about, always try to make your meals surrounded by protein and vegetables. Always pick the protein, the vegetables, and then eat whatever after. So like always try to build your meals off of that while traveling. I also like fruit bars. That's It bars. Those are my favorite. They're only 2 ingredients, and those are really awesome too to have on hand. I'm trying to think of what's even in my bag right now. Like a little like oat bar. So again, it's gluten free for me. It has kind of quite a bit of calories. Dried fruit is another one. I had banana chips. So like the only ingredients were banana and coconut oil, and I think there was like added sugar or whatever. But for me, it's like at least I know that's a simpler ingredient. Like there's only 3 ingredients in that versus like if I go get a bag of chips or like I get some fast food or something. So I really try to make sure that I'm adequately getting nutrients in no matter where I am in the world. If you're going to a foreign country, I would still kind of take the same considerations. If you don't really know like what's in things, most of the times you can tell though if there's like high protein, like if there's a meat in it, or we know what vegetables look like. So I would really base your meals off of that. I would also make sure that you're drinking adequate water. Like I think it's very easy to be dehydrated when we're on traveling and we're out and about and we're not in our routine. So that would be another one. And other than that, like just trying to find sources that are kind of like in tier 2, I would say. So like tier 1, you would have your whole foods like vegetables, fruits, high protein, like lean proteins, like chicken, steak, fish, things like that, like that you can make at home. And then tier 2 would be kind of like your like protein bars, your whey shakes, your like beef jerky, like using those things as the things that you would use like if you're on the go for a day. So if you're really busy one day and you can't, make a steak while you're driving to wherever or you're flying to wherever, like use these other tier 2 things as your kind of crutch to make sure that you're getting still adequate protein and things like that. All right, so that's question 8. Question 9. So I think there's only 2 more questions. Yeah, 2 more questions here. So I have I don't have a fitness one at the end, but it'll be funny. I'll answer this one first though. How much coffee is too much coffee? So as I'm literally speaking, I'm having an energy drink. The thing for caffeine is it's so dependent on the individual. Some people are like what you would consider kind of like hypersensitive to caffeine. So they, even by just having a cup of coffee, they get very like out of tune and things like that. Some people have a very high threshold of caffeine. I would say, if you're relying on, the point for it being too much caffeine is if you're relying on it to keep you consistently energized throughout the day, then there's probably an issue somewhere. That means you're probably not getting enough sleep, you're probably not getting enough recovery, you're probably not getting enough adequate nutrients and hydration to keep you energized. So I had like one of those like mini, on the plane you had a mini travel sized caffeine, so that's probably about like 50 to, I'm going to be gracious here with the milligrams, but 50 to 90 milligrams. And this here, actually don't even know how much caffeine's in here. And this is 140. So let's say the most I've had is 250 milligrams today. That's about 2 to 3 cups of coffee, roughly, right? So depends on the size of caffeine. So I would say most people can probably get away with 2 to 3 cups of coffee a day and be fine. That's roughly about 250 to 300 milligrams, roughly. So if you're looking at like an energy shake, I would say that you got to make sure how many milligrams. Some have 300 milligrams of caffeine in them. Again, this one has 140. So it's just really, like I said, it's dependent. I know some people that have like 12 cups of coffee a day, and I'm like, okay, we gotta slow down here. And if you're someone that is like that, I would personally try to start by prioritizing your sleep, trying to like get better recovery, try to eat better nutrients, and slowly decrease the amount of cups of coffee. I also try not to have caffeine past like the afternoon, so like 1 or 2 o'clock. Lately, like this trip, I've been having caffeine a little bit later. I have been using it as a crutch lately, just to get me past. I haven't been sleeping well. Like even today, I went to bed at 1:30, and then I woke up at 4:30. So I legit had 3 hours of sleep today. So I am using caffeine to kind of like push me so I can actually last the rest of the day. So I would say for everyone that's listening, I would say 2 to 3 cups of coffee is probably a good amount. If you can do 1, like that's honestly even better. I also would say to try to have your caffeine in the morning, like past 1 hour when you wake up. So if you wake up at 6 a.m., try to have it 7 a.m. and later. Don't have it between 6 and 7. Try to have it later, so that way your body's gonna adapt a little bit better, and you're not gonna have as much of a crash later on in the afternoon. So I would say to do that. If you're also someone who gets very anxious on having caffeine, try taking a supplement called L-theanine. So L-theanine kind of takes away those like negative side effects that high stimulants or high caffeine has. So I personally like to do double the amount of L-theanine to the amount of caffeine I do. I know that is not a lot of people are going to do that, because I'm a nerd about supplements, and I'm like, if that's what the research says, and that's like something that I love to do. But I do find, so for example, if I know I have roughly around 200 milligrams of caffeine a day, I'll have 400 milligrams of L-theanine. And I don't usually get that negative side of the energy, but I also get a really nice like flow of energy throughout the day, and I don't get anxious from it. So that's also another little tip that I like to throw in with caffeine. Other than that, my last question was, who does my beard? Like who cuts my hair, who does my beard? So I actually just started seeing Gibson at Private Barbershop. So for anyone who is in the Abbotsford or Mission area in British Columbia, go check out Private Barbershop. I think they have a location in Chilliwack too. So it's just like literally just a barbershop. It's really cool. I actually just started going, and I really like the atmosphere there. It's very clean, it's very professional, and I think that's something and going back to kind of the business is like make it like quality, right? Like if you were to walk into your business, would you want to go into your own business, like, or would you want the same service from your business? And I think that's a really big thing here, is that you got to ask yourself, like, is that something that I would even walk into if I were going to start it? Or would I buy that product, or would I buy, that service or that coaching from that individual? So I really think that's a really big step in understanding that, and that kind of ties in. That's why it was a funny question with the beard. But I really think that taking all these questions in, I'm really happy to be able to vocalize them, but also get the opportunity to explain them, because I know a lot of times with chats and things like that, it's really hard to really convey the message that you want to convey. I really try to keep this under 30 minutes or around 30 minutes. I'm actually at about like that 28, 29 mark. So it's perfect. Like I got about 10 questions. And yeah, I want to do these again. I would love some feedback on what you thought of this Q&A. I will, like I said, I will try to get this noise, background stuff out of the way. Moving forward, I'll try to do it in a quieter place, but this is something that I was able to do just waiting here. So like I said, if more questions come up, please let me know. I would love to do this again, kind of like a part 2. I will put this on my platform, so you can see them on multiple things. And if you have any other questions on this, please email me at upnorthathletics@gmail.com, or Instagram at upnorthathletics, YouTube upnorthathletic. Pretty much everything is Up North Athletics, and I would love to help out. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for everyone submitting their questions. It really meant a lot to me to be able to do this and take the time to answer questions that were of underlying need. So I hope everyone has a great rest of your day and enjoy the rest of your day.